At my own graduation speech, my cousin screamed I cheated. My uncle dropped fake scandal posts saying I slept with professors and lied about being an orphan. Then I got suspended. Until I posted a video explaining everything. And it went viral with receipts. I was halfway through my graduation speech at Arizona State University when everything fell apart in the loudest, ugliest way possible. I remember the lights blinding my eyes, my hands shaking around the paper, and the crowd actually listening, like really listening, which shocked me because I'd spent 4 years feeling invisible. Then I heard my name screamed like a threat. My cousin Tyler, in his wrinkled button-down and that stupid backward hat he always wore, rushed the stage. Security didn't even react at first because he moved like he belonged there. He grabbed the mic from my hand so hard it smacked my teeth. "She cheated her way through college," he shouted, his voice cracking through the sound system. "Tell them how you slept with professors. Tell them how you scammed financial aid. Tell them how you lied about being an orphan so people would feel bad for you." People gasped. Chairs scraped. Phones went up like a swarm of glowing insects. I froze. Not just shocked, but hit with that sting of betrayal that makes your body go cold in places you didn't know could freeze. Then I heard another voice. "Check your phones, it's all online." That was my uncle, standing proudly near the aisle like he'd won something. He held up his phone, waving it, yelling that he'd exposed me. Later I'd learn he dumped a bunch of evidence online that morning. Fake screenshots, edited emails, weird DMs claiming I seduced professors for grades, even a clip of me crying during freshman year twisted into some confession. He'd been planning it for months. I barely had time to breathe before 2 campus officers grabbed my arms. The whole arena watched while I got dragged off stage on my own graduation day, like I'd committed a crime. And then I saw her. My old roommate Jess standing in the aisle laughing, actually laughing. She held her phone up, recording the whole thing, mouthing the words, "I told you so." I didn't even know what she meant. I just knew my stomach dropped in a way that told me this was all bigger than I understood. Backstage, they kept saying university policy and temporary suspension pending investigation, and you'll need to surrender your ID. My ears rang too loud to process anything. I kept asking for someone, anyone, to tell me what was going on, but all I got were tight smiles and suspicion. Within 24 hours, everything in my life was ripped out from under me. My school email locked. My diploma hold flagged. A formal misconduct hearing scheduled. The student newspaper plastered my name across its site with the headline, "Graduation Scandal, Senior Accused of Academic Fraud." I tried calling Tyler. I tried calling my uncle. I tried calling Jess. None of them answered, but they sure kept posting. Every lie spread like gasoline fire. Hundreds of comments. Thousands of shares. People from campus, even strangers, debating whether I deserved to be expelled right before graduating. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my tiny studio apartment in Tempe, staring at the wall, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I kept thinking, why now? Why at my graduation? Why would my own family do this? It wasn't until the next morning, when I finally forced myself to watch the videos and read the posts, that I saw something that made my blood run cold. Something I couldn't ignore. Something that made me hit record on my phone and decide to fight back. My video would go viral for a reason I never saw coming. I didn't grow up with much. People at ASU always assumed I was this tough, independent girl who didn't need anyone. But the truth was simpler. I learned early not to expect help, because help never came. My parents died when I was 13. Car accident on I-17. The kind people call instant. I bounced between relatives after that, mostly my Uncle Rick, whenever he felt generous enough to take me in, which usually meant I cooked, cleaned, and stayed out of the way so he could complain about how much I cost him. Tyler, my cousin, was the golden boy. Straight C's but still treated like he invented electricity. Every time I accomplished anything, a scholarship, an award, a decent report card, Tyler would twist his face like it offended him. And Rick, he'd remind me I was a burden, but a lucky one because not every orphan gets family. I stopped correcting him about that word. It wasn't worth it. By the time I got into ASU, I knew I had to do everything myself. I worked 2 jobs. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I lived off microwaved rice and whatever free food student groups were handing out. I kept my head low because I couldn't afford to mess up. College wasn't just an opportunity, it was the first thing in my life that was mine. Then came my freshman roommate, Jess. She was the opposite of me in every way, loud, pretty, self-assured, walking around like the campus was built for her. But we clicked at first. She said she liked that I was real. I didn't realize until later that meant she liked that I made her feel grounded without ever requiring anything from her. We were close for a while. She'd invite me to parties, drag me along to coffee shops, introduce me to her friends. But she also had this way of quietly collecting pieces of people. Weaknesses, insecurities, secrets. She remembered everything you said when you were tired or emotional or drunk, and she filed it away. I didn't see it then. I started opening up to her, about my parents, about Rick and Tyler, about how I was scared of failing, scared of losing my scholarships, scared of being the poor girl everyone pitied. She listened. She was good at listening. But sophomore year, things shifted. She fell out with another girl in our dorm badly, and I watched Jess burn that girl down socially with nothing but rumors, screenshots stripped of context, and a few well-timed concerns to enraw. It was brutal, precise, surgical, like she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to gut someone. I should have paid attention. Instead, I moved off campus junior year, thinking distance meant safety. I stopped hanging out with Jess as much. She didn't like that. She'd make passive comments about me, thinking I'm better now or forgetting who was there for me. I brushed it off. People grow apart, right? Except she didn't grow, she calcified. Meanwhile, Rick and Tyler barely spoke to me unless they needed something. Money, help moving, someone to watch their dog. They'd comment on my posts with little digs about the college princess. Tyler would joke that I made up trauma for scholarships. I ignored it. I thought it was jealousy or immaturity or just the same old crap I'd dealt with since I was a kid. But looking back now, all the signs were there. Jess collecting my secrets. Tyler resenting anything I achieved. Rick obsessed with control over the one thing he didn't actually help me with, my education. And all of them paying way too much attention to me during senior year. I just didn't know why. By the start of senior year, the tension around me felt like static. Always there, always buzzing, but never loud enough for me to name it. I was taking a full load of upper division classes, working part-time at a campus call center, and doing everything I could just to stay afloat. I didn't have time for drama. I didn't have energy for anything extra. But people around me started acting weird. It began with professors asking me if everything was all right at home. One even pulled me aside after class and said he got an email about me struggling emotionally. I laughed it off, confused, but something about the look on his face told me the email wasn't vague. It was personal. Then my academic advisor asked if I needed support resources for family instability. I told her I was fine, confused as hell. She looked relieved but also strangely cautious, like she was afraid to say something that might set me off. I didn't realize it then, but someone was planting seeds. Meanwhile, Jess reappeared in my orbit like a ghost that hadn't finished its business. She started messaging me more. Heart reacts on my stories. Random check-ins. Hey, we should grab coffee. Messages even though she never actually followed through. I brushed it off as nostalgia, maybe she missed having someone around who made her feel grounded. But the tone was off. Too sweet, too curious. Almost probing. One night she called me out of nowhere, saying she saw Tyler on campus and thought I should know. I laughed because Tyler didn't even go to ASU. She said, "Oh, maybe it just looked like him." But her voice had that fake innocence I used to fall for when we lived together. 2 days later, I caught Tyler in the student union. He tried to act like he was nearby and wanted to surprise me. But he couldn't tell me why he was in Tempe or where he was staying. He didn't even ask about my life. He just poked around, asking what scholarships I had, whether I ever got audited for financial aid, whether professors were fair to me. It was the strangest conversation we'd ever had, and that's saying something. Then, in late April, about 3 weeks before graduation, I got a weird anonymous DM on Instagram. It just said, "They're getting ready. You should too." I blocked it. I thought it was some random troll or maybe someone from one of the campus groups I fundraised for. People got dramatic around finals, and I'd seen stranger things. But then more things started breaking loose. A professor I trusted stopped looking me in the eye. A group that I was part of suddenly went silent every time I joined. A friend from my psychology class asked if I was nervous about walking. I asked why. She shrugged it off and said, "Oh, nothing, just rumors." Rumors about what? No one would say. I knew something was happening around me, but it felt like trying to catch smoke between my fingers. I couldn't pinpoint it, couldn't chase it, couldn't even tell if I was imagining it because of stress. But the night before graduation, something snapped into place, something I should have recognized as a warning. Jess posted a throwback photo of us on her story. Me at 18, smiling like an idiot, holding a bowl of instant ramen in our dorm. The caption said, "Tomorrow's gonna be interesting." And then a winking emoji. I stared at it for a long time, feeling something cold slide through my chest. I told myself she was just being dramatic, that she meant the ceremony or the heat or something stupid. But deep down, in the place you never want to admit speaks the truth, I knew she meant something else. I just had no idea how brutal interesting would become. When I got pulled off that graduation stage, my brain couldn't make sense of anything. But once the shock started wearing off, anger took over, sharp, bright, and blinding. I needed answers. I needed to know why. None of it felt random. None of it felt spontaneous. And that sick feeling in my stomach kept telling me this wasn't just about jealousy or cruelty. Someone had been preparing this. Someone had planned it. So after the university suspended me and I got home, still in my wrinkled graduation gown, I did the thing that felt the least powerless. I opened my laptop and pulled up the fake scandal my uncle posted. Every screenshot, every DM, every email supposedly showing me seducing professors or bragging about cheating. And that's when I saw it. Not the lies themselves, those were ridiculous, but the metadata. Two of the screenshots still had traces of file names at the top because my uncle didn't crop them correctly. It was small, faint, but readable if you zoomed in. Both files were named using the same pattern. Just Room 2021 backup. My hands went numb. I rechecked, and rechecked, and rechecked. They weren't from my uncle's phone. They weren't created by him. They were created on Jess's laptop. Not just that, the background UI on one screenshot didn't match my phone or my uncle's Android. It was Jess's iOS theme. I remembered it because she used to brag about customizing it. My uncle didn't make the fake evidence. Jess did, and that wasn't even the worst part. I kept digging. I found a faked email supposedly from me to a professor. The grammar was weird, too formal, too stiff. It didn't sound like me at all. But the signature line at the bottom had a tiny formatting glitch I recognized immediately. Jess always double-spaced after her name. It was a quirk from high school she never dropped. She even did it in Google Docs. My stomach twisted. I scrolled through everything, realizing piece by piece that the entire scandal had been constructed by the one person I'd trusted with the deepest, rawest parts of my past. But one thing didn't fit. How did my uncle get these files? Why was Tyler screaming the same lines Jess used to throw at me when we fought sophomore year? My anger turned into dread, a slow, heavy dread curling under my ribs. I needed proof, real proof, something more than metadata and gut instinct. So I opened my graduation livestream, the official one posted by the university, and scrubbed through until the moment everything exploded. And then I found the detail that nearly made me throw up. When Tyler rushed the stage and grabbed the mic, he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at someone in the audience, giving them a nod, a rehearsed, confident nod, like they were signaling him. And the camera panned just enough to catch it, Jess, sitting 3 rows back, phone up, mouth curved in this tiny, satisfied smile, the same smile she used to have when she talked about winning. That's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. Jess wasn't just involved. She orchestrated all of it. My uncle and cousin weren't the masterminds, they were tools. Tools she fed information to, tools she manipulated, tools she used to detonate my life at the exact moment I was supposed to rise above everything I'd crawled out of. But why? Why would she go this far? Why would she spend years collecting details about me, waiting for the perfect moment to burn me publicly? I kept watching the clip, watching her eyes, watching her anticipation. And that's when I realized the twist I never saw coming. Jess and my uncle had been talking behind my back for months. I recognized his stupid baseball cap in the corner of one of her older Instagram photos. They'd met up, they'd formed an alliance, and I wasn't just betrayed. I'd been hunted. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even pace. When the realization hit that Jess and my uncle had teamed up, that they'd been slowly circling me for months, I just sat there in the silence of my apartment and felt something inside me harden. It wasn't rage, it wasn't fear, it was focus. The kind that feels cold and clean. If they wanted a war, I wasn't going to swing blindly like they expected. I wasn't going to beg the university to believe me. I wasn't going to chase them for explanations. They'd fed off my silence and confusion once. I wasn't giving them another chance. I pulled out a notebook, the same cheap spiral I'd used to track my expenses freshman year, and I started writing down everything I knew. Motive, timeline, inconsistencies, connections, digital fingerprints, names, dates, access points. If Jess was the architect, she left fingerprints. She always did. She was meticulous, but she wasn't flawless. She just assumed I would be too overwhelmed to look closely. She forgot who I was. I started with the scandal package my uncle posted, dozens of files. I dug through metadata, timestamps, source devices. I cross-referenced every document with old backups from our freshman year dorm folder. Sure enough, 2 DM screenshots were repurposed from actual conversations we'd had. She had just changed the text. Then I checked my old college email backups, and I found something else, 4 login attempts from an IP address in Glendale. My uncle lived in Glendale. Jess never did. Which meant she'd either given him access to my accounts, or he'd given her access to something of his. The more I dug, the clearer it became. They'd been swapping information, building a fake digital version of me piece by piece. But here's the thing about liars, they forget that truth leaves a cleaner trail. So I built my plan around that. First, I gathered evidence, screenshots of metadata, video timestamps, side-by-side comparisons of fonts and spacing. That Instagram photo where my uncle accidentally appeared in the background of Jess's selfie. Then I reached out to the one professor who still believed in me, Dr. Klein. He taught digital ethics, and he responded within 5 minutes when I told him this was urgent. When I explained everything, he asked one question: "Do you have verifiable proof you didn't author any of the alleged messages?" "Yes." "Then you need to make this public, immediately." I wasn't ready to post yet. Not until I had something explosive, something undeniable, something that wouldn't just clear my name but expose the rot behind everything. So I turned my attention to Jess. She'd always underestimated me, always saw me as the quiet one, the poor orphan girl who should be grateful for scraps. She'd never imagined I'd turn her own habits against her. Remember sophomore year. She used to connect to my laptop hotspot because her Wi-Fi card was broken. I checked my old hotspots. Her device was still logged in, which meant if she connected to Wi-Fi automatically anywhere near me, I could see it. And that gave me an idea, one that felt dangerous but perfect. The next step was Tyler. I knew he'd crack first. He always cracked. He was the type who bragged when he thought he'd pulled one over on someone. I just needed to get him alone and talking, so I texted him, "We need to talk, I know everything." He responded in less than a minute. "What do you think you know?" Panic, rapid, guilty, good. I didn't reply. I let the silence sit. Let him stew. Because the truth was, I didn't need him to confess in person. I needed him to panic loudly enough that Jess would notice. Because when Jess panicked, she slipped. And when she slipped, I'd be waiting. What I didn't know, not yet, was that I was about to stumble onto something far darker than just a coordinated smear campaign. Something Jess had been hiding for years. Something my uncle knew about. Something they never meant for me to find. Tyler didn't text me again that night, but he didn't have to. Because the next morning, at exactly 7:14 a.m., I saw something on my hotspot list that made my whole body lock up. Jess' iPhone 12 connected. She was nearby, not in my apartment, but close enough to auto-join the network she'd used years ago. I moved to the window and pulled back the blinds slowly. My apartment complex had a tiny parking lot, barely big enough for the residents. And there, parked 2 spaces over, was a silver Honda Civic with someone sitting inside. Jess. Hair in a messy bun, phone in her hand. Eyes glued to the screen. She wasn't even hiding. My heart pounded, but I stayed still. If she was watching me, I needed to know why. And what she did next made the floor tilt under me. She lifted her phone and made a call. She wasn't talking loudly, but I recognized her expressions. I'd lived with them. I knew the way her face tightened when she was giving instructions, not asking, not questioning, instructing. Then, out of nowhere, she screamed into the phone and slammed her palm on the steering wheel. That's when a second device connected to my hotspot. Rick's Galaxy S22, my uncle was nearby too. My mouth went dry. I took screenshots. Evidence, time-stamped, saved to cloud. Then I grabbed my keys and slipped outside, circling the long way around so she wouldn't see me. I ducked behind the dumpsters near the back of the lot and listened. Her voice was sharp, frantic. "No, you idiot, don't message her, you'll mess it up. If she posts, we're done. Do you understand? Done." "No, Rick, I told you, she cannot talk to the professors. She can't talk to anyone." Then she said the sentence that pulled the ground out from under me. "If the adoption paperwork surfaces, this all blows up." Adoption paperwork? My heartbeat slammed in my ears. I wasn't adopted. I'd been told that 100 times. I was shuffled between relatives, not adopted by them. There was no paperwork, but Jess didn't talk like she was guessing. She talked like she knew something I didn't. I stepped backward, trying to process, and my foot hit a loose piece of gravel. It skittered across the pavement, loud enough to cut through everything. Jess's head snapped toward the sound. I ducked behind the dumpster, breath caught in my throat, but it was too late. Her car door opened. Quick footsteps moved toward me. I pulled out my phone, gripped it tight, and braced myself to run, but she didn't come around the corner. She stopped halfway and made another call. This one was calmer, calculated. "Yeah, it's time, she's close. You know what to do." A third device appeared on my hotspot list. AZ Fam Legal Office, what the hell? Why would a family law office be anywhere near my apartment? Why was Jess connected to them? Why was my uncle involved? I stayed hidden until her car finally pulled out, tires screeching as she sped away. The moment she was gone, I sprinted upstairs, opened my laptop, and started searching through every old document I had: childhood records, school forms, random files saved on outdated email accounts. And then I found it. A scanned PDF I had never noticed before, buried in an old inbox I hadn't used in years. It wasn't labeled clearly. It looked like a random attachment. When I opened it, my hands started shaking so violently I had to grip the desk to stay upright. It was an adoption termination form. My adoption termination form, signed by my uncle. Dated 2 months before he took me in. With a note at the bottom: "Future guardianship unresolved. Financial aid eligibility under review." Jess had found this. My uncle had hidden it. And together, they'd weaponized something I didn't even know existed. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This wasn't cruelty. This was a cover-up, and I had just stepped into something much bigger and darker than a graduation scandal. I stared at that adoption termination form so long my eyes stopped blinking. My uncle's signature, his handwriting, his address, my name, it didn't feel real. It felt like reading someone else's life. But the line that gutted me, the one that made everything suddenly click into place, was the small typed note at the bottom: "Financial aid eligibility under review." Not for him, for me. And right then, the truth slammed into me so hard I went lightheaded. My uncle hadn't taken me in out of obligation. He hadn't kept me because I was family. He didn't even want me. He kept me because he realized very fast that taking custody of a grieving kid came with something he could use. Money, aid, benefits, tax credits, stipends, support programs for guardians of minors. My entire childhood after my parents died wasn't charity. It was income. And when I aged out at 18, when all those benefits stopped, he didn't just get irritated with me, he got angry, because I stopped being profitable. And now, years later, that same man was willing to burn down my life because he saw an opportunity for one more payout. One more piece he thought he could control. One last thing he felt entitled to. But where did Jess fit into this? The answer was worse than anything I imagined. I dug deeper, combing through old files, archived messages, deleted screenshots Jess had once accidentally airdropped to me years ago. And then finally, in a folder of old legal PDFs, I found the missing piece. A letter, not to me, to Jess's mother, from my uncle. It was short, blunt, cold in a way that made my skin crawl. "If she keeps quiet about the paperwork, I'll make sure your daughter gets the scholarship she wants. She already has the girl's records." The girl. He didn't even use my name. I sat back, shaking. Jess wasn't acting out of jealousy or obsession or some twisted need to control me socially. At least, not originally. This had started because her mother needed me to disappear academically. Because if my status as an orphan was questioned, if my aid was revoked, if my educational record was flagged, it would supposedly open space or redirect funds toward a program Jess was applying for. Something competitive. Something she couldn't win on her own. But Jess didn't stop at helping her mother. She enjoyed it. She took the information and spun it into something vicious. She made it bigger, darker, more humiliating. My uncle provided paperwork. She provided creativity. Together, they became something dangerous. And Tyler, he was just the pawn they used to create the loudest explosion. The part that chilled me, the part that made my skin prickle with genuine fear, was realizing how long this had been brewing. Jess had been collecting ammunition on me since freshman year. Not because she hated me, not because she wanted revenge, but because she knew someday she might need to destroy someone to get ahead. I was never her friend. I was her contingency plan. And my uncle, he wasn't some clueless man manipulated by her. They fed off each other. He needed someone to bury the adoption truth. She needed someone willing to sabotage a student's future. They found symmetry in cruelty. The moment I understood the real reason behind everything, how cold, calculated, and transactional their motives were, something inside me snapped into place. They didn't ruin my life because I did anything wrong. They ruined it because it was convenient, profitable, useful, and that meant one thing: I didn't need to feel guilty about what I was about to do, not even a little. I didn't bother hiding anymore, not my anger, not my story, not the truth they buried for over a decade. I pulled my hair into a bun, washed my face, set my phone on the counter, and hit record. No theatrics, no makeup. No tears, just me, the version they never thought anyone would believe. The version they'd spent years trying to erase. I started with the adoption paperwork. I held it up to the camera. I explained what it meant. How my uncle cut off my adoption before taking custody. How he collected benefits tied to me for years. How he kept the truth buried because he knew the moment I learned what he did, he'd lose control. Then I showed every piece of evidence Jess created. The files with metadata linking back to her laptop, the versions she forgot to fully edit, the screenshots she reused from old conversations. I played the clips from graduation. I zoomed in on her face in the crowd. I played the part where Tyler looks straight at her waiting for a signal. Then I dropped the final hammer, the letter from my uncle to Jess's mother, the one that proved Jess didn't just find out about my paperwork. She knew. Her family helped hide it. And she used it as leverage to destroy me publicly for a scholarship she wasn't good enough to earn on her own. I ended the video simply. You tried to humiliate me on the day I earned something with no one's help. Here's the truth, all of it. I posted it everywhere, and my world exploded, only this time in the opposite direction. Within an hour, the video hit 600K views. Within 5 hours, it was on local news pages. Within 12 hours, national outlets picked it up. By the next morning, ASU called me. Not an email, not a form letter. A direct call from the dean. They lifted the suspension immediately, issued a public apology, launched a formal investigation into the entire incident, campus officers, the live stream footage, everything. My uncle went silent. Jess locked her accounts. Tyler tried to post some half-hearted, "We were concerned for her" excuse, which backfired so badly he deleted it within minutes. But the real consequences came a week later. Someone leaked the financial records, showing exactly how much money my uncle had received during my childhood. The state opened an inquiry into misuse of dependent benefits. His job found out. His church found out. His neighbors found out. Jess faced her own fallout. Turns out her scholarship committee didn't appreciate being mentioned in an exposed conspiracy. They dropped her from consideration instantly. The program banned her from applying again. And her mother? She got her own investigation for participating in falsified documents and attempting to manipulate educational funding. But the best part, the part that made the months of fear and humiliation worth it, the university allowed me to rewalk graduation, privately, with staff and professors who'd supported me. They handed me my diploma and let me finish my speech in a silent auditorium. Afterward, Dr. Klein looked at me and said, "You didn't just clear your name, you exposed something bigger than them." My video ended up passing 20 million views. People wrote messages from all over the country, some telling their own stories, some telling me they believed me from the first second, others saying the revenge was legendary. But my favorite comment, the one that made me screenshot it and save it forever, simply said, "You didn't survive them, you outgrew them." And that's exactly what it felt like. Walking out of that auditorium with my diploma in my hands, the sun setting over Tempe, the air warm and clean, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom, real, earned freedom. And the kicker, a week later, Tyler texted me a long, rambling apology. I didn't open it, I just replied, "Interesting."